Efforts in Washington could make areas around the Mississippi River a bit safer. It comes after 3 kids drowned in the river last month while visiting a park in Algiers. This morning, the search continues for the youngest of those 3, 8-year-old Allie Wilson Berry. She's in the middle of those 3 kids. Nearly a month ago, she and Kevin Poole on the right jumped into the river to save her sister Brandy, who is shown on the left there. Brandy and Kevin's bodies have since been recovered. A funeral was held for Kevin Poole over the weekend. Loved ones say he was someone who always smiled and had a bright future plan for himself. In the wake of that tragedy, Congressman Troy Carter, who represents the metro area in Washington in Congress, wants to take some action. A U.S. House committee just approved a measure he introduced that would make the banks of the Mississippi River hopefully safer. It will be part of this year's WRDA, which is the Water Resources Development Act. Congressman Carter is joining us with more on this. And I watched your testimony yesterday, and you were talking about how this hit you close to home.
Yeah, you know, this is a tragic accident that no family should ever have to endure. This study will give us an opportunity to have the Corps of Engineers come up with real life safety measures, whether it's sirens or signage or fencing or early warning systems or deterrence, reminding people how dangerous the river can be. As a young man growing up in Algiers, unfortunately, we spent many of our days in the summer swimming in the river, largely because there were not enough recreational facilities available to us. So we sought to cool ourselves, to recreate and refresh ourselves in the dangers of the river. So this tragedy brought this very much back to home for me and for my siblings, who unfortunately risked our lives swimming in the river. And now we want to make sure that the pain and the suffering that this family is having to go through with the tremendous loss of their families, that we have measures in place to protect them against this in the future.
And the WRDA Act has been around for a long time. You guys are working on WRDA 2022, and you proposed 2 amendments yesterday. This one did get through the committee.
Yes, this one got through the committee. The other one is one that gives us an opportunity to utilize those resources that are so desperately needed in Louisiana. WRDA is the Water Resource Development Act of 2022 that governs through the Corps of Engineers projects that are important to our area, making sure that we're shoring up Mr. Go, that the fundings are cemented in the measure that guarantees that those fundings will in fact be secure and a part of law.
And there are things in WRDA that affect every state in this country.
Yes, the WRDA is for the entire country. Although 1/3 of those projects through the Corps of Engineers happen to be in the combined districts of Congressmember Graves and myself here in the state of Louisiana. So Louisiana is represented strong on transportation and infrastructure, where WRDA is ultimately marked up and edited. We were successful in passing it out. It heads to the floor for final action. And kudos to my colleague, Garrett Graves, who worked hand in hand with me on these amendments to make sure that WRDA has the language, funding, and action in place for the residents of Louisiana.
And quickly, let's talk, switching gears, we only have a couple of seconds, but on the baby formula, Congress passed a couple of acts yesterday, at least the House did. The second one, funding more money for the FDA, that did not get a whole lot of Republican support.
That's unfortunate. You know, unfortunately in Washington, we end up seeing things that are partisan that really shouldn't be. Baby formula and making sure that our families that are in need have access to the critical elements that are important to the nutrition of children. And this should not be a matter that is Republican or Democrat. Unfortunately, some of our friends on the other side of the aisle tend to want to make it that way. And I implore them, let's put aside the partisan politics and make sure that we're doing what's best for the American people. And in this case, making sure that we're getting formula in the hands of mothers and fathers and children that happen to be Americans that are not Republicans or Democrats. It's not partisan. These babies could care less about our party affiliation. but they do care about getting resources.
All right, Congressman, thank you very much. We'll be following both those bills, all those bills actually, very closely as it rolls through the Congress. You can look for reports on our mobile app and in later newscasts.